Rokhaya Diallo is a writer and documentary maker in Paris. She does a lot of writing for many different sources, including the Washington Post, and she is a prominent anti-racist campaigner and very prominent in France. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're a Black feminist daughter of Muslim Senegalese and Gambian immigrants, and you
Yeah.
grew up in Paris, in a suburb there, and you earn your living sort of writing about race in France. And I only say this and draw the attention to the fact that you have a Muslim background because it's important understanding how Muslims feel right now in France. Can you tell me, you're in touch with the community. What are people saying?
Yes, it's a very difficult time because there have been from the politicians constant demands to the Muslim community to say openly that they didn't stand with the terrorists. And the thing is that it's very offensive to say that because most of the official Muslim organizations have sent their deepest condolences after the attacks and have said how they were standing with the rest of the nation against terrorism, and the idea that Muslims should stand higher than the rest of the population um, draw a line between us and them, who are supposedly close to extremism and who, if they don't say anything, will be people could be suspicious against them. So it's kind of difficult. Even myself as a Muslim journalist have faced some nasty moments.
You face nasty moments in terms of people lashing out at you and the community?
No, for example, I have been one of the people who were very critique against Charlie Hebdo before the attacks. I signed an op-ed in 2011, so it was 4 years before the deadly attacks, to say that to me, the way they were using their cartoons was kind of nurturing, feeding an Islamophobic context. So that op-ed was signed in a context where Charlie Hebdo was already did already face an attack that was not deadly. It was in the night. It was a fire. So I signed that op-ed,
This is
and
before the actual shootings took place in 2015 in their
exactly it
offices.
was 4 years before, and we still don't know who set their local on fire. And the thing is that we were 20 to sign the op-ed, and that I am the only one to be constantly questioned about my signature. And 2 weeks ago, I was in a debate about gender, about feminism, and a very prominent philosopher told me that I was um, I was responsible for the shooting. And before saying that, he said, "You are a Muslim black woman, and you armed the arms of the terrorists." He said that on a TV channel in front of 1 million people. I was in shock because I didn't understood the reason for reminding that I was Muslim, and to say that a text that I signed years before the shooting made me having any relationship with the terrorists. So it really was a major controversy here in France, but it reminded me that beside being a journalist, to some people I was still a Muslim woman.
Where is the truth between the two, this great division within France? Because the original publication of the cartoons, which resulted in those shootings, um, obviously all of us stood with France at the time. I was a reporter. I came to Paris and I covered that. And we felt that, obviously that was extreme violence, going after cartoonists in an office and shooting them. And then there was also another attack on a Jewish grocery store.
Yes.
And people felt terrible and they felt real solidarity with France. And yet there is many people that are uncomfortable with the publishing of these cartoons because they do offend. So, so where do you either have to be on Macron's side or on the Muslim population side, or do you think most people in France fit somewhere in the middle?
I think that many people are in the middle. Like you have people who understand that we have the right to publish any cartoon, and I understand that. I understand that it's the freedom of speech, and you have the right to criticize any religion. The thing is that why are you doing that? Like, I understand the idea that Charlie Hebdo is humoristic newspaper, and they have a way to use satire to attack people and to make fun of them. But to me, it's my personal conception. When you are power as a newspaper, the purpose is to make fun of those who are in position of power. So constantly targeting Muslims is their right, but I'm not sure about the reason, because Muslim people are already at the bottom of the society. They belong to the poorest fringes of the French society. They face constant discrimination, constant offensive language in the media. So I think on top of that, those how can I say that, offensive cartoons, I don't know how it can help us getting any better. Like,
Rokhaya, tell me, why do you think that President Macron didn't deliver? I mean, he's an intelligent person.
yes,
Why did he not deliver a more measured statement after the beheading of the school teacher? Obviously, it was an emotional moment for him and for France. That violence, again, a terrible act of violence against a teacher who, through educating people about free speech, showed some cartoons, and there's a debate whether he should have or not. But do you think that Macron could have been a little more measured and a little more sensitive to the Muslim population? Why was he not? And did he do that intentionally? Do you think because of the political field in France and elections are in front of them?
I think that Macron is in a very, very tricky position, because those cartoons, as they costed lives, and it was a major trauma in France. The killing in Charlie Hebdo, and then the Jewish supermarket was a major trauma, because it was so horrendous. And so I think that from that time, the cartoons have been the symbol of freedom of speech, and people would say that it is our identity and we need to stand in their defense. And I think that
But Muslims don't process it that way.
no, like they are most of the Muslim are not comfortable with the cartoons, but they're okay. They're like, okay, it's okay, we won't say anything because it's the freedom of speech. But they're not comfortable with that. And there is a small portion of people who are violent, but it's like just no so, some persons. And the thing is that I think that Macron cannot really have a more balanced discourse
Do you
without
think he
angering.
can or
He
cannot?
can't. He can't, because it would anger the majority of French people. Because I think that most of them think that it is the symbol of our identity of free speech, which I don't think it's like I don't think that our free speech only stands in those cartoons, but it has become a kind of symbol of what we stand for. And the fact that so many countries out of France don't understand what we are doing really feed the idea that we are a very particular identity and way of defending freedom of speech. So we need to stand and to defend our French particularism. And it's a trap, because Macron, he cannot say that it's offensive. And at the same time, he cannot say that we need to give up, because it would send a message that, oh, we have lost to terrorism and violence.
I'm Canadian. I'm talking to you from London, but I'm
Yes,
Canadian. My
yes,
Prime Minister Trudeau came out and he
yes,
said he said in solidarity with
yes,
France
yes.
and in condemning violence, he also said in a press conference, freedom of expression does not come without limits. We owe it to ourselves to act with respect for others and seek not to arbitrarily or unnecessarily injure those with whom we're sharing a society. That's measured.
Yes, that's measured, and I definitely understand what he says. And the thing is that in France, in France, many people commented what he said as, oh, as him being a coward. You see, so they don't understand that he's trying to bring a whole society together and to make sure that the freedom of some wouldn't be an offense to the others. it's not seen like that. And to me, there is this, that we don't, in France, we don't really understand what it is to be a minority, and the fact that you cannot just say I'm free to say anything, and that freedom would be offensive to a group that is already on the on the side of the society. So I feel like we're coming from a very different culture, in which the culture of the majority is not seen as dominant, but it's seen as being the norm.
I mean, obviously they have some history there with the Roman Catholic Church and France's secularism and separation of church and state, but they apparently haven't explained this very well to people like President Erdogan of Turkey, who sees this as, what is Macron's problem with Islam, and nor have they seemed to explain it to their own people who have immigrated to France and live there and are French citizens.
I think that people understand, because you don't have protests in France against the cartoons. You don't have protests from French Muslims. Most of the organizations and the religious leaders, they come to try to bring peace to the public sphere. Actually, I think that the French Muslims are much more moderate than Muslims from the other countries, but still they are facing demands to say louder and louder that they are not terrorists, that are okay with the caricatures, which is, you know, you can just don't care, you can just not care about the caricatures. But I think that there is a difference between what was the situation of France in the early 20th century, with the church that was dominant and with Catholicism being the religion of the majority, and now there is no Islam is not in the same position, it's not threatening the power of the state, and Muslim people are less than 10% of the population, and among them there are the poorest fringes of the French nation. So it's not the same. There is no threat of Islam, getting over the French state. So it's very different.
Two quick questions. President Erdogan, do you think that that was helpful, what he said? Do you think that he thought he's standing up for Muslims, or do you think that he was igniting the situation further in France?
I think is just using that what's going on to make domestic politics, because we haven't heard him being that loud against China and the way they are treating Uyghurs. So, like, I understand that there is an issue in France, but if you cannot be a president dealing so well with China and not saying anything about the way Muslims are tortured there, and then say that France is your top problem. So I think
And
that
obviously they have a little bit of history, Macron and Erdogan, over Greece
yes,
and the Mediterranean and other differences.
exactly, and immigration. So I think him just is just taking advantage of the outrage against Muslim communities.
Where does this go from here, to wrap this up, do you think? And what do you worry about? Is it going to become more radicalized, and is there going to be more violence? Or where does it go from here? It doesn't seem, we've seen this attack in Vienna now.
Mm.
And obviously there's the danger that there isn't more understanding in the Muslim community in France, that there is less, and they feel more discriminated against, and that acts like what has taken place with the school teacher become even more possible, tragically.
it's it's um it's very concerning, actually, because I can feel that, and with the pandemic, with the lockdown, there is much tension in the French society, as well as many other societies. And the fact that the government is focusing so much on trying to shut down Muslim organizations so quickly makes Muslim people think that they are criminalized for just being openly Muslim and trying to stand for their rights. So on one side, it goes, to fuel the idea that you are not accepted as a Muslim in the French nation, and on the other side, there is this like civilization war rhetoric that makes French, that makes the country having the idea that we are standing alone against another civilization, which is not true. It's much more complex than that.
Well, and as we speak, even here in the United Kingdom now, they've increased the security alert to the top level and they're worried about attacks here. So it is spreading beyond France's borders. But Rokhaya Diallo, really a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for being so generous with your time, and it was great to have your thoughts.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.